Okay, so let's talk about the power of perspective. Hi, my name is Carrie, and if you're new to this channel, I am the owner of KT Facilitation. And here on this channel, this is kind of an unscripted, raw place for us to talk about leadership, about our role in leadership, about how we show up for ourselves so we can show up for others, and really kind of sometimes the struggles that we have as entrepreneurs, balancing our lives and showing up in those leadership spaces. So let's get into it. Let's talk about perspective and the power of perspective. We often hear in meetings, we're only going to talk about the facts today. Okay. What does that really mean? And what is a fact? And I'll tell you, in today's world, I don't even know, right? There's always an argument over what is a fact and what's not. Why is that? So we get together and we say, let's talk about our meeting that we had on Tuesday. So we can say that, yes, it is a fact. We had a meeting on Tuesday. We were there were minutes, it was on our calendar. That is a fact. So let's talk about what happened at our meeting on Tuesday. Now we start to get a lot of different answers. We start hearing different things, and we start sometimes arguing about what is fact and what's not, right? Somebody might say, I heard Mark say this, and somebody else says, I didn't hear Mark say that. Or somebody might say, I didn't take it that way, right? So things now start to get a little muddy. And we're like, we were all there. We all experienced the same thing. How come we can't figure out what's fact and what's not? And I know it's a fact because I heard it and this is what was said. So let's think about this from a different perspective, right? We make decisions based on our experiences and what we know. Our brains take in so much data every second. I don't know, like 20 million pieces of data are subconsciously coming into our brain, and our brain can only filter out so many. So we really only consciously recognize about 40 of those. So we think about 20 million pieces of data, 40 of them that I'm recognizing. Of those 40 that I'm recognizing, it's probably because I have an experience or an association or something that is meaningful to me in that data that my brain is letting me consciously recognize. What are the chances that you and I are getting 20 million pieces of data and are recognizing the same 40 things? So an example I often use in training is just to imagine a scenario where we are outside, you and I are outside, and I smell smoke. And for me, taking in that data of smelling smoke, I get a warm feeling. It is a comfort. I was like, oh, that smells good. I have an association or a memory that I associate the smell of smoke or fire to as sitting around a campfire as a kid, or sitting at the fireplace having, a cup of hot chocolate, right? There's this warm, comforting feeling that comes with that information, the things that I took in through my senses. So imagine that you maybe had experienced a house fire, or you had to evacuate your home due to a forest fire. Your reaction to that smell of fire or smoke is not of comfort, but of fear. And what you think we should do in response to that is probably very, very different than what I think we should do in response to that. Let's take it one step further. Let's say that there's a third person who's standing there with us who doesn't even smell the fire, doesn't even smell it. Not part of their conscious, didn't take it in. Can't figure out what we're even arguing about because it didn't happen. And does that mean that what is factual to them is wrong? It's not. It's their truth. It's their fact. I didn't smell smoke. I'm not having a reaction to it. I don't think we need to make a decision on anything, right? Think about that. Think about the times where you've had conversations or been in meetings and you're arguing about something, whether something was said in a certain way or whether there was something in a report and somebody didn't notice it, right? And we spend all of this time trying to prove our point, try to prove to somebody else that what I experience is the same thing that you experience. And I don't understand why you don't think we should make this decision. We were both in the same room, but our experiences are very different. And this is where perspective can be so powerful. Instead of using it as a tool to argue our point, use it as a point to discover new things. Approach it with a place of curiosity. So tell me more about your experience, because I didn't experience it that way. Say more to what brought that up. Say more about how we might be able to maneuver through this. The more I can learn on somebody else's perspective, somebody else's experiences, the more I'm able to get out of my one story and really look at a holistic picture with more information and more data. It now kind of unlocks this ability for me to say, okay, I would have done it this way, right? This would have been the decision that I make or the direction of that I go. But now that I'm hearing this, I'm approaching it from a place of curiosity. I'm starting to unlock innovation. I'm starting to unlock creativity. I'm starting to take that information and say, okay, now there's maybe even another option of something that we can explore, right? Instead, what we're doing in our life and in our world is we're so afraid to hear somebody else's perspective and somebody else's experience because we think that it means that we have to change ours. We don't have to change our own experience. I can't change my own experience. But I can acknowledge and give space to and want to learn more around somebody else's. And I look at that not as something that takes something away from me, but actually expands my mind. It's something that I'm learning from. And now I have not even just a better idea and an expanded knowledge base, but I'm making a personal connection. I'm building trust to be able to say, like, wow, like that's a different experience than I have. So what does that mean for us? Here's what I saw, right? Where do we might have some connections in our experiences? What are things in those experiences that are pushing us away? What are things that we can really do now that we can look at this from a different place or a different angle? Who else has a different experience that's not even here right now that would be valuable for us to look at? And again, it has nothing to do with taking away my own experience. It also doesn't mean that I'm going to experience it again in your way, but I can have respect for where you've come from. And I can have respect for the things that you have taken in and the choices that you think we should take, or that, you know, why things have been done in a certain way. And this not only applies, I hope you're understanding, not just at work, but in our life, right? And understanding that my brother and I lived in the same household with the same parents. We're 3 years apart, so I had a little bit different experience. I was a little bit ahead of him in experiencing, high school fun. But we had totally different experiences with our parents. Part of it is our personality and how our parents parented us. And part of it was how we took in conversations, how we took in things that were happening at the dinner table, how we took in family vacations, right? So when we think about going in and understanding perspective, there's a lot of things that we can do. And the first one is really to slow down, right? To slow down our conversations, to slow down our meetings, our planning sessions, and really giving space for people to bring in the knowledge and the experience that they have. Opening up that space so that we can learn from one another. And it sounds daunting, right? It sounds like we don't have time for that. We're on a time schedule. That's great that you had this great experience, but we got to move on. And what happens when we do that? Right? We're pushing. Sometimes we're doing things that aren't working and we can't figure out why because we didn't really understand how it was going to impact everybody. Sometimes we're pushing out our own people. Some of the people have the best ideas, right? But we're not giving them a chance to share and be part of it. So creating this space where we really have to slow down to go fast, right? Go slow to go fast. And we become a culture that is open to new perspective. We become a culture that has built trust and understanding, and that I am strong enough in myself, confident enough in myself and what I've experienced that I don't feel threatened by hearing something different than me. And I can show up in that space and I can be open and I can be curious and I can learn. And as an organization, as a culture, as we continue to practice and do that, it becomes faster. It becomes easier. We're having those conversations and hearing those perspectives in more often, in a more authentic way. And people are beginning to share more and more. And then we really can take this organization from trying to force change because we know that we need to, and then having so much resistance to it, to actually having the excitement and togetherness of the group leading the change, leading the charge for change, because they feel part of it. And there's a value in what I bring to the organization into the process of change. We can be in the same office, we can be going through the same change, but how it affects me and my position could be very different from how it's impacting someone else. Even though the data tells us what needs to happen. Even though the data might tell us that it's going to make our jobs easier, there's still an experience that comes with going through that change and embracing and understanding how we bring everyone together on that journey, right? So, something to think about. How do you lead your groups through change? How do you use perspective? How do you use different experiences within your organization to leverage the group? How do you embrace that and use it to spark innovation and creativity? Because there's so much value in learning from one another. So I want to hear your experiences, and we'll talk soon. Until next time.